There is a not-so-funny lie down in Atlanta. This not-so-funny lie involves an officer-involved killing. It involves the burning of that Wendy's. We went through this whole video, point by point, a couple days ago. The Atlanta PD officer that was involved in that officer-involved killing has now been charged with felony murder and other charges, according to the Fulton County District Attorney, Paul Howard. We went through the video. We pointed out that it's a very sad video. Why is it a sad video? Why is it a disturbing video? Because it's sad and disturbing when anyone gets shot, regardless of the circumstances. But we went through point by point and showed there is no way to argue this was not justified. The guy, the perp in this case, the cops were talking to him. They tried to de-escalate the situation. They tried to calmly arrest him. He busted out, wrestled the cops. The cops still didn't use a lot of force. He threw the cops off of him. The cops still didn't use a lot of force. He grabbed their taser gun. Cops still didn't use a lot of force. He ran away. Cops still didn't use a lot of force. Then he turns around, points the taser gun at them, and fires. Finally, the cops discharged their weapons. Very sad. It shouldn't have turned out that way. But obviously a justified use of force. You can't have law enforcement without some use of force. And now, because of mob rule in this country, and more than that, because we've given in to a bunch of dishonest premises, this guy's life might be ruined. The other officer on the scene faces 3 charges, including aggravated assault. The cop now who's being brought up on murder charges is Garrett Rolfe. The other cop, Devin Brosnan, has been put on administrative duty. And the Rolfe has been fired already, even if he weren't charged with murder. Fired, again, is that justified? Doesn't seem so to me. Why is this happening? Well, in part, the mainstream media are ginning up the tensions here. So here is one, I think, representative headline. This one came from, was it ABC? Rayshard Brooks remembered for hard work and dedication to family. You'll notice in this whole incident, I have not really said a thing about Rayshard Brooks. There are many things to say about Rayshard Brooks, but I find it distasteful to speak ill of the dead, and I don't think there's any reason necessarily to jump into that if it's not relevant to the story. But now the mainstream media have made it relevant to the story. They've made us talk about it. Okay? Because they have put an obvious lie right here. Rayshard Brooks remembered for hard work and dedication to family. The only thing Rayshard Brooks is remembered for with regard to his family is beating his wife and abusing his children, which he was brought up on charges for and convicted for not so long ago. Yeah, guy's got a long criminal record. I didn't mention the criminal record when we first went through this story because I didn't think it was relevant to whether or not he would get killed, right? That's not, the cop didn't shoot him because he has a criminal record, nor should he have. The cop shot him because there was a threat and Rayshard Brooks stole his weapon and pointed the weapon at him. But now, because of the media lionizing this man and trying to ruin the cop's life, I have to mention it. That Rayshard Brooks has a very long rap sheet, and he did some very, very terrible things, like beat his wife, like abuse his child, being completely whitewashed by the media. By the way, it's not some conspiracy theory that this happened. It's being acknowledged by other media sources, even in fluff pieces. So here's another one. Atlanta shooting victim Rayshard Brooks' Toledo family speaks out. This happened in Atlanta, but some of the family members of Rayshard Brooks live in Toledo. So they speak to Rayshard Brooks' father, Larry Barbine, and he says, this according to the article, he'd come in January, Rayshard, of that year to meet his father, Larry Barbine, whom he'd never known in his childhood. So classic sad story. You've got this other deadbeat dad, Larry Barbine, who abandons his son when his son is a little kid. And so is there any particular surprise that there might be family problems down the line there? No, of course not. These kind of issues become generational when you have family breakdown. But then Mr. Barbine has the gall to say this: we grew together in that year as if I had never been out of his life. It just didn't last long because of racism. Didn't last long because of racism? I think it didn't last long because you didn't take the care to know your child when he was a child and move to a different city. It's not racism's fault that this man didn't care to raise his son. That's his fault. Larry Barbine's son. I feel bad for the guy that he lost his son even though he didn't know his son. But that's not, you can't blame racism for that. And then in the piece, this is the evidence that Rayshard Brooks actually did commit all these horrible crimes against his own family. Mr. Barbine believes officers prejudged his son by the color of his skin and his criminal record, which shows several charges of theft, obstructing an officer, battery on a family member, and other misdemeanors. Now, notice the conflation of these things. Prejudged based on the color of his skin, we all think that's a bad thing, and his criminal record. That's not prejudging in the sense, that's judging. There was a judgment and you were convicted of crimes. Some crimes, very bad ones, like beating your wife and abusing your kid. Not the same thing, but they're trying to blur these issues. I didn't get to know my son because of racism. No, you didn't get to know your son because you were a horrible father. That's why, okay? It's still sad. This was the same point I made yesterday when we talked about the shooting, which obviously is what is at issue here. Regardless, I don't care how Rayshard Brooks ended up dead. It's still sad because a guy ended up shot. That's why the video was disturbing. But we can't conclude from that simply because it is sad, simply because a man died, that it was unjustified and the person who killed him is a murderer, especially when we have it on tape, especially when we can see that that is not the case. And so as a result of this murder charge, giving into a mob rule that has now become, it seems, totally lawless, Atlanta police officers are walking off the job.